Wow. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. It is almost 8 a.m. Eastern Time, which is 1 p.m. Nigerian time. Welcome to today's program. I know that we have a habit that we want to make sure we continue with, which is to start on time. So for today's presentation, it's on how to understand how the brain works and what can you do to increase the processing in the brain for the working memory so that you'll be able to help your child or your student or your client to improve on the skills that are necessary, that are needed to improve reading, mathematics, and writing, and basically life skills, really, if you think about it that way. When we build our processing skills, when we retrain our brain in such a way that the brain itself becomes anxious to learn, then of course it improves everything all across the board. My name is Dr. Badewa Adejugbe Williams. People call me Dr. B or Dr. Williams. I am the founder of the Royal School of Educational Therapy Foundation, which is located in Nigeria, and Ladama Consultancy, which is an educational therapy practice in the United States of America. I am an educational therapist professional, and I do work with all clients of all ages with learning differences, which could be based on anything. But today we have with us Dr. Carol Brown. I'll tell you a little story before I move on. When I joined the Association of Educational Therapists in 2000, I think it was 2005 or 2007, I was anxious to know what to do to help my clients. I was a bit intimidated to be an educational therapist. It's a big responsibility. It means people are trusting you with their brains. How can you help the brain to work better in all circumstances? How can you help that child who cannot sit still to even be able to think, talk less of learn? How can you help that autistic brain or that child with intellectual disability to regroup and refocus and have the executive functioning working well? So I started doing my research, and that was how I came about the writings and the teachings of Dr. Carol Brown. I'm sure she doesn't know that story, but we've been communicating for years. And I'll tell you a bit about my foundation, and then I'll let you know what we do at the foundation and how we incorporate equipping minds in our program. We are a nonprofit that is set up in Nigeria. It's a learning center that provides therapeutic services for learners of all ages with developmental disabilities. All of them, we cover them, even those who may not necessarily have a disability, but they have learning challenges. We provide services. We offer educational therapy. We offer speech therapy, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, academics, life skills, as well as vocational skills. And our mandate is to change the world, to change the mindset that if a person has a learning difference, doesn't matter. This person is just as relevant in society as you and I. So we need to be inclusive. So in order to allow that inclusivity, we do everything we can to spread the word and to train people on how do you manage children or adults with differences, which is why Dr. Carol Brown is here today. So we do a lot of sensitizing. We're always on radio, we're on TV, and this will also be broadcasted eventually on, what we talked about on TV. We'll do a press release on it so people can have access to information, because lack of information is one of the detrimental aspects of our field. So we also campaign with the government. We initiate policies, we propose policies for inclusive education and inclusive services. And this is one of the services that will be quite beneficial to learners in my home country, which is Nigeria. So on that note, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Dr. Carol Brown. So now, who is this amazing individual that I have been talking about? Dr. Carol Brown has over 38 years of experience as a principal, teacher, cognitive developmental therapist, social worker, reading and learning specialist, speaker, special needs consultant, and above all, a mother. Now, Carol has completed her Doctor of Education from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. She received her MA in Social Services from Southwestern Seminary and BA in Rehabilitation Counseling from Marshall University. She's a contributing author in the book Neuroscience and Christian Formation and Human Development, Equipping Minds with Cognitive Development, Equipping Minds Cognitive Development Curriculum, and Social and School Violence and Primary Prevention. She has served as a learning specialist, teacher, principal, and head of school in classical Christian schools in North Carolina, Georgia, Northern Virginia, and Lyon, France. Carol trains public, private, and homeschool educators in the Equipping Minds Cognitive Development Curriculum, which she created. Now, this is the essence of why we're here. We have been using Equipping Minds at my foundation since inception in 2017. And I have to tell you, from my experience, from what we see, we have been able to transition children from our program, which serves clients with moderate to severe disabilities. We've been able to transform them and transition them back to general ed schools, to regular schools, from the success we have seen using Equipping Minds. We have been able to also engage some of our students. Actually, some of our students have become workers. One is a broadcaster at a TV station. People who came to us with limited abilities, they've made such tremendous improvement that they've been absorbed in society. So what makes Equipping Minds so special? How does it work? How can you transition that brain and receive the same benefits as some of the children that we are doing? I always believe that knowledge learned but not shared is a waste to society. What are you doing if you're not sharing what works? So best practice dictates that we share. So on that note, I now yield and turn over to Dr. Carol Brown. We're so privileged to have you. Thank you so much.
Well, Dr. Williams, it is an honor to be here with you today. And I loved hearing the story, how you first found us. And that always amazes me, because one of my prayers has always been that God would place us in the paths of those who this can benefit. And even for this day, or whoever sees these recordings, that you can know that there is hope, and that you can have stories just as Dr. Williams shared, or our own personal journey that I'll just touch on briefly, because as she said, I am a mother, and 30 years ago, when our second son was born, it was a very traumatic birth. And so he had some oxygen deprivation for those first 13 hours. And because of my background, I knew that we could see some delays. And so from the get-go, he was in different therapies, and I participated in those sessions, or I was in the observation room, because I knew that I needed to learn what to do to help him. So his OT, his speech. So that was very transformative for me. And then on this journey, we were doing a lot of traditional remediations with more reading programs or more comprehension programs. And he was in school, but finally in high school, he came home one day, and keep in mind, I'm the head of the school. And he said, "Mom, I can't process everything as quickly as it's coming at me." And one thing I knew from his testing was that his processing speed and his working memory were still challenge areas. And so we pulled him out, and I hired someone to homeschool him. And when you could slow it down at his pace, he was fine. He was able to learn the information. However, you and I both know that the world does not slow down. And so for him to be successful for further training or in a job situation, I knew that I had to figure out how to increase that processing and working memory. And so 14 years ago, I stepped out of private school administration. And even though I love, training teachers in those settings and still have that privilege to do so, I was focused more on, well, let's just teach multi-sensory. Here are some brain-based instructional methods. Here are some strategies. Here are some modifications. But I wasn't really going in to change the brain itself. And that's what I realized had to be done. Now, when I did my research, I found out that a lot of people were saying that the brain could change. And the problem was you weren't finding a lot of research that was affirming that training the brain also generalized to reading and math and comprehension and job skills. And so it wasn't until I found the work of Dr. Reuven Feuerstein, the cognitive psychologist out of Israel, who kind of pushed back on Piaget's belief that you just let a student go through life interacting with the environment. Dr. Feuerstein really believed you needed to step in as a human mediator and be very intentional. And so as I had developed this program and was working on those aspects, I also knew that it had to be fun. It had to be engaging because you see, and I think everyone knows this, when a child is struggling, you will see them shut down. When you pull out letters or numbers and you're switching curriculums and they're just, feeling defeated, or you teach something one day and the next day it's like it's not there. So there are so many different aspects in this process. And so what I did was use games, and we are going to actually use these games today. And I want to let you know that I am giving you all a lot of resources, okay? So I want to take just a minute as we get started. I'm going to share my screen with you and show you this. So we're going to go in and we're going to come in, and here is the Equipping Minds page. So can y'all see the Equipping Minds page?
Yes.
Okay, so here you are, and where you're going to go is our shop. And when you go to the shop, now I just put these up for y'all today, okay? So these are not going to be staying up long term, but here are some extra resources. So under the Equipping Minds section where it tells you what games to get, here is a handout that will stay up, okay? And this is our Equipping Minds to Reach Your Full Potential. These are 41 pages from the actual curriculum. And so one thing that Dr. Williams talked about that is also my passion is that this information is accessible and affordable to everyone. And that's why this handout exists. It's why the Equipping Minds YouTube channel exists, with now over 70 videos that are complimentary. And you can use those and start getting trained. We were the parents who spent tens of thousands of dollars on different therapies. And so that's not something that we wanted to pass on to everybody else. We wanted to make this accessible. So when you come in here, you will see this handout and the 41 pages and the different games and everything. So we're gonna, I'm gonna be holding some of these up later for you as well. So just know that these are here as we're going through these. Now, the other thing you're going to see, and this is for those of y'all in schools and want to go deeper, you've heard me just talk about Dr. Ruben Feuerstein. Here is his list of what are called cognitive functions. And so when you look back at his work, it really builds on the work too of John Amos Comenius, Aristotle, and even going back, if you think through the book of Genesis, if you remember, one of the first things God asked Adam to do was to name the animals. Okay. So to think about things, we have to have a name for them. And so using labels, using names is very important. So this is a handout that I am gifting to you all, and you will see what these cognitive functions are, the equipping mind games that we would use for them, and then questions that you would ask. Okay, so because our time is limited, we're not going to be able to hit on all these, but I wanted you to have these resources. Now, if you're in a school or you're having to do goals, and here in the United States, they're called IEP goals. You may have goals in a school, goals that you're working on with a family. Here is another handout that talks about cognitive abilities and how it's defined, how it impacts academics, what our goal would be, and here are the Equipping Minds games that you would use to increase these abilities, how to increase comprehension, processing speed, auditory processing, working memory, long-term memory, fluid reasoning, and visual processing. Okay, so those are some key charts. Now, the next thing I am going to show you, y'all, this has been around almost 100 years. Okay, and so one thing that came up in all of my research was the work of Dr. Stroup and the Stroup effect. And most people are actually familiar with this. And so here you're going to have this page, and these are colors. So here you'll have the words, the colors. And so you'll just have brown, white, purple, yellow, blue, and you would just read the words you see. Okay, and if you have a non-reader, then you're not going to be able to do this quite yet, but you would just read it. And then the next part of the test is they would then have you read it again, but this time the word brown is in the color brown. We're going to put white in this light gray, so white and purple and yellow and blue. And so they would have you read this page as well. And then this is where it really got tricky. And on this one, you will notice that the word brown is written in green. So what they would ask you to do is to come in and say the color of the ink. So you would actually have to ignore what is written and say green, orange, blue, red, purple. Okay, so that is the basic Stroup effect. And so I wanted to share that with you because Equipping Minds uses the Stroup effect in hyperdrive, okay, in the most extreme ways possible. And basically what the Stroup effect has been known for is how to really assess working memory ability, attention, processing, what we think about now as executive functioning abilities. And when you were looking at that and it had the wrong color for the word, the Stroup effect takes two pieces of information and they are in conflict with each other, okay? So you have a cognitive task, you have something you need to do, but then you have a conflicting stimuli that's saying, wait a minute, don't say the color, read the word. And so your brain has to override that desire. And so what they have found is that that is a predictor of how successful someone can be, whether it's in an academic setting, in a work setting. In a recent study that came out, they looked at adults with dyslexia and found out that they were a lot slower than people without dyslexia when reading the color of the ink. Okay. And while that is fascinating, and they were talking about the regions of the brain that the Stroop effect impacts and how the Stroop effect is so important in telling us about executive functioning and working memory, they never used it as an intervention to actually then train it. And I will share with y'all, one time I had the privilege of training a group of psychiatrists. And at the very end, they looked at me and they said, Carol, we know how to test it. You figured out how to train it and change it. And so that's what we're about doing. Even this morning, y'all, I went online just to see if anything had changed, and it really hadn't. And looking at executive functioning, and basically they're still just giving you strategies, okay? They're still just giving you strategies instead of here is how we're going to train the brain. In the field of dyslexia, I am very privileged to train a lot of dyslexia therapists who are so passionate about teaching children to read. And but many times when they're doing this, the child has hit a wall. And anytime, I need you to hear me, anytime you see that child hit that wall, that's where it is either their processing or their working memory that is interfering, or it's both, okay? And so they are not intentionally trying to hit that wall. It is right then trying to cut down a tree with a butter knife. I mean, they are doing their very best, but we need to go in and strengthen those areas. So how are we going to do that? Well, you heard me say we're going to do it by having fun and by playing games. But I need to tell you something. You're going to do it too. You're going to take turns with your students. And selfishly, I'm just going to tell you, your brain's going to get stronger. My brain's stronger now than it ever has. And I get to celebrate my 60th birthday this year. So I know. So one of the first things we're going to look at is something you might just have around your house, and that's just with a deck of playing cards. And I'm going to show you all the different things that we use, but what I want you to keep in mind, okay, is that you can do this with anything, absolutely anything. Because one thing we know is processing is so important. And those of y'all who are reading specialists, you probably also know that the ability to name things, it's called a rapid naming test, is very important. And so I like to use the deck of cards as a great place to start. And so I may just ask the student to tell me the number they see. Okay. So now if your student does not know numbers, then you're not going to start there. And if your student knows a couple numbers, you're only going to start with what they do know. So that's one of my obsessions, basically, is that we can only train the brain with what the brain knows. And so we will add information, absolutely. but we want to do it one thing at a time and not do too much too fast. So we would just say the number you see. Y'all ready? So 8, 3, 5, 7, 4. And you can call a 1, so one item. And then you could also do this if you'll see us mention blink cards. And you can do this with blink cards and say how many you see. You can do this with set cards as well. So you may have some set cards. The game Set has been around a really long time. And if you're able to get that one, or the game Quiche, here's the new version of Quiche. But you may have numerous decks of cards around. Now, for those of y'all overseas, if we are not able to get these to you, we can send you a PDF. But we do now have our own Equipping Minds cards. And so while we would take other cards and you would have just a number, a color, and a symbol to work with, the same thing with Blink, numbers, colors, shapes. Well, now with the Equipping Minds cards, you have colors, letters, numbers, animals, and here's that Stroop effect. See the wrong word under the animal? Yes. So that is competing. And then we have a symbol, a line above, and then even a direction, a left arrow. And so the reason that we have all of these things here is because these are the elements of what we use in Equipping Minds. However, these should be very familiar to you and your students, because most of your students might know that this is purple, this is a horse, this is a C, this is a 4, this is a line above, this is left, and they may even be able to read camel. So all of these things are familiar. And you will also, if y'all have the Equipping Minds materials, there's a whole code that all of these items go with. Because what we take, as you heard me say, we can only train the brain with what the brain knows. And what does the brain need to know when we're doing life in school? Well, we need to know colors and letters and numbers and directionality and symbols and sounds. And so that's why we take these things and use these, because we want the brain to see numbers and colors and letters and images and words as their friends. Okay. And so what we are doing, if we are not able to get these to you, we would send you a PDF and you could then print these on cardstock and laminate these. Okay. So we are just working in some of the different countries. Sometimes someone from the States may be traveling over and we can get things to you or send a larger order over. So we've been able to work with that. So, but remember what the Stroop effect said? That there is competing stimuli. So if I ask you to just tell me the color you see, you have to ignore the word, the picture, the number, and the letter. So y'all ready to try that? So yes, let's just say our colors for a minute. So brown, purple, black, white, blue, yellow, orange, green, white. Okay. So hopefully y'all did a great job with that. Now we're going to say the letter that you see. And one thing I'm doing, I am going to do this systematically. We started at the top with the color. Now we're going to go to the letter. So let's say the letter. So you're ignoring everything else. So G, E, B, D, E, B, A. Okay, how are y'all doing? Okay, so now forget about the color, put the letter aside, only focus on the number you see. So 4, 6, 1, 6, 4, 5, 2. Okay, so now we are going to take this up just a notch. Okay. And one thing I will tell you, I'm going to reiterate this maybe a couple times. When you're doing this with a student, when you're doing this, you can do it one-on-one, you can do it in groups, you can do this with a 2-year-old, you can do this with a 92-year-old, you can do this with a college student, you can do this someone with dementia, Down syndrome, dyslexia, ADHD, gifted, someone who is not vocal. I believe everybody has an internal vocalization that's going on. And so you would be their voice, but you're always going to take turns because you always want to model. There is something just so powerful. And y'all, it's just fun because you feel like somebody's playing with you. You're doing it together. It's not about the child performing or having to do something for you. You're doing it together. And that is just amazing, as it helps even reduce anxiety, and it just helps build that confidence. And once again, you are strengthening your own brain. And we always do this, and we are always using language. So with the processing, the other thing that we love to do with the cards is to actually sort these, okay? So we will sort these by those different qualities. And the way that I have been doing this, and we actually have a Equipping Minds Cards course that is a few hours long because we just keep adding to it. Because there's so many different ways to use the cards. Oh my goodness. Right now it's up to a 6-page handout. And so what we would do is we would take our cards and we would lay out what are called our code cards. And we would put down the main cards here that have our corresponding colors. So you're going to see these, and from 1 to 9, and then you can come in and sort these by color, and you would put it under or below there. So yellow under yellow, orange under orange, blue under blue, red under red. And so you could sort those by color. Well, then you would switch gears and you would say, okay, now let's sort by letter. Okay. And so you're then sorting by letter, and you would say, oh, I see C under C, H under H, E under E. So you're looking up here, you're having to ignore what's down here. Remember what they're talking about with the Stroop effect: conflicting stimuli, having to focus, having to ignore things that are irrelevant. Then let's do our numbers. So I see 8 under 8, 3 under 3, 1 under 1, 9 under 9, 2 under 2. And then I could put in my animal: turtle under turtle, spider under spider, horse under horse, Now then I could do my word. So now I have to look and say elephant. And elephant is going to go here under elephant. The word spider under the word spider. Pig under pig. Bear under bear. And then I could move to my symbols. Box under box. Okay, see how tricky that was? It actually goes over here. So if your student would do this, that's where you're going to say, oh, that is tricky because you saw a box here. But let's look. Check this. I'm going to tell you, I never say wrong. No, what were you thinking? Okay, because this is supposed to be challenging and work your brain. So I'm going to say, oh, check, or wow, like you heard me say, oh, that was tricky because there's a box, but we're going to put box here, box under box. So circle, circle under circle. And this is a line in the middle. So you'll see the line there. It's a line in the middle, underline in the middle. And once again, we have box under box. And so even taking these, and you can sort the entire deck by one thing if you want to. The other thing, keep in mind, you can do this. If you have a student who doesn't know everything, maybe you start with just the first four or the first two things. Okay, two colors or two numbers. There are 81 cards, so you're able to do so many different things. So please keep that in mind for me. And then when you're doing that and you're using that language, you are building that rapid naming that's going to be so important. It's also helping that visual process, that scanning. You're doing a systematic search and a lot of cognitive flexibility, and then remembering what you're being asked to do. Now, I like to think of working memory as the ability to hold on to two or more pieces of information, basically taking turns. Okay, so you're having to pull out information, you're having to hold on to the letters. You've just sounded out a word and you heard a student say cat, but then they say dog, and you're thinking, that wasn't even close. Why did they just do that? Well, their working memory was weak. They didn't hold on to what they just heard or even what they just said. Or they may decode a word and get down a couple lines later and see the word again, and it's like they've never seen it. And so you want to strengthen that ability to hold on to those pieces of information. So one way that we'll do that is we will take turns with alternating, and you'll see this in the Equipping Minds workshops, where we'll do this with blink cards, with the deck of cards, for example, and then I'll show you on the new cards, but we'd say the number 8, the color of the next card, red, and then the shape of the third card, diamonds. Now you can first start with doing 2 items, just number, color, or color shape. If your student doesn't know their numbers, but they know their shapes, do color and shape. So first alternating with 2 qualities if you need to, but getting up to 3 is absolutely where we want to get to. But then with the new cards, we can take it all the way up to 7 different things that we're holding on to. So when we would do that, we would say, tell me the color, orange, the letter, G, the number, 1. Okay, so you could do color, letter, number. You could do number, color, animal. You can mix this up, okay? It doesn't have to be a certain way. Now, many times when we are doing the cards and we're working on getting that correct language, and if language is a real challenge for your student, then that's where many times we will do 3 black stars. And we're saying number, color, shape, because that's the correct grammar that we would use. With the new cards, that has taken it to a whole other level. And so I give a lot of flexibility here. And anybody who knows me or is trained with me knows that I always love it when someone says, oh, and we even came up with another way to use the cards. I'm like, that's great. Let me hear what you're doing. And so we would take these and do that sequence and alternate those. So, which makes it a lot of fun. And as you're doing that, you are connecting those pathways. Now, one thing that I will also let you know is that with some of our students who language is a real challenge, they will even say, I see black. I see a horse. I see a circle. Okay, and so they'll use that language ahead of time. And I've got to share this story. And I don't know if anybody else has had this experience yet, but if you're an Equipping Minds therapist, you use the words I see a lot, because when we are giving directions, and to this day in 14 years, every family we've ever worked with will say that their student has a hard time following multiple step directions. Okay, and most adults are now in that category as well. And so we will say, use the language, I see you. Okay, I see you getting your shoes on. I see you getting your shoes on. Then I see you getting your books. What do you see yourself doing? Okay, and the student would say, I see myself putting my shoes on. I see myself getting my books. Okay, and so you're using that language. Well, my son, who I developed this program for, did go on to university, graduated, is married, just celebrated his 5th anniversary yesterday, and is a father. And so he decided to actually then, he was our first student, and then he interned for us, and he has been an educational therapist now for, over 10 years. Well, he works from home because we work with people online. And my granddaughter is now 20 months old. And just this past week, she said her first sentence, okay, at 20 months. Well, her first sentence was, I see you. And so for those of y'all, Equipping Minds, we say that all the time. So even last night, she was over here and we were playing a game and doing some peekaboo. And she would just sit there and go, I see you. So I started putting it with everything else. Chloe, I see a camel. I see a horse. So that was just her hearing that language and starting to incorporate it very young. So we thought it was, pretty appropriate since it is something we use all the time. But as you know, children pick up on our language, right? And so I wanted to share that. Like I said, with these new cards, we are able to do so many different things. So I wanted to check on some questions for a minute right now.
Great.
And Dr. Williams, did you have anything?
Wow. I'm a bit kind of like amazed at what an incredible human being you are. I was just thinking as I was going, I was listening to you like, oh my God, if only I had none of this in the 90s. When I was studying, I wouldn't have to go through so much, everything was just right there. One thing when, I'll tell you a little story so you see how effective this really is. I did an assignment in California earlier last year for 3 months, right? And when the case manager who I was representing came back from pregnancy, and I now showed her some of the things I was doing with the clients using Equipping Minds, she said to me, Dr. Williams, I learned from you what I didn't get enough of during a master's program for 2 years. She learned this in just a week of how the brain processes and how you can enhance the activities of the brain and help a child who is, who has ADHD to actually sit still and focus on something. So these games are amazing. Every child likes to play a game. I don't care where you are in the world. And when you present this as a game, they are so motivated and they are not aware that they're actually learning to retrain their brains and that they're actually focusing, and I used that. I said, listen, I really liked where you sat still and played that game with me. Now let's use that same technique to focus on our reading. And, they're like, yeah. And you say kids that are more motivated to learn. Okay, knowing that, yes, it is a reward for them that they will get to play games. But, you have to do your work and they will play board games, and that really, really works in the classroom setting and on one-on-one therapy. Excellent. Thank you for the free resources. I was looking at this like, wow, let me be quiet. I don't want to say what we paid. Okay, but you guys, you've received a gift. So thank you so much for that. Okay.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. And what I would tell you also, because I saw one of the questions in here, if your child happens to have Down syndrome and is, you may or may not be aware, because honestly, I'm going to tell you, until 13 years ago, I had never worked with anyone who happened to have Down syndrome. And so it was a 10-year-old little girl named Rose, and we have a program named after her, our Roses program, where we have over 600 step-by-step videos of me working with students. But she, was reading, was a 4th grader, and her mom got it approved for us to do this as her intervention in school during her school day. And she made such significant gains on her reading, on her math, on her science, on her language testing, that that is what propelled me to go and get my doctorate and do the research that you can read on the Equipping Minds website under the research tab. Because some of y'all, you are therapists, you're in different settings, and people are going to ask you, well, is this research-based? Where's the research? Well, just go to that research tab. You can download that. You can go to ResearchGate as well. So all that is there. But what happened was it generalized. Well, one thing that's interesting is, this fascinated me, okay? So with Equipping Minds, if someone is getting the whole curriculum, it is only a one-time purchase. Okay. It's not like, with a math, you need to get kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth. No, no, no. This is a one-time purchase for all ages, all diagnosis, all abilities. One book. One book. I mean, there's a student workbook, but it's one book. And so what's fascinating to me was that I don't care what your diagnosis is. I'm going to do the exact same thing with every single person we work with. But everybody's going to progress differently. Okay? Every single student, what I have learned, and this surprised me because I thought, oh, it's going to look different if someone has dyslexia, or if someone has autism, or if someone is nonverbal, or if someone is, we're going to do different things. Actually, we're not. We're going to do the exact same things. They're all going to use the new cards. They're all going to play blank. They're all going to do our memory games. They're all going to do the colored numbers page. Everybody's going to do the animals, but everybody's going to progress at their own pace. Because one thing that's unique with Equipping Minds is that with the games, and y'all, now I'm going to, I'm just going to let y'all know this. If someone's on here and they trained with me before 2016, okay, so much has changed. Okay, I have added so much. And so what has happened is all of our games now overlap. So when you do the animal game, for example, and I'm just going to, in the last couple minutes, not trying to totally overwhelm y'all, but like we would take these animals and they're going to say the animals they see, but then they're going to go in and we're going to give directions and we're going to say, I see you drawing a circle around the bear. I see you drawing a box around the snake. And we're going to add those gradually, but they're going to do that. And they're going to draw a circle around the bear and a box around the snake and an X on the fish, a triangle around the cat, a line under the elephant, and a line above the turtle. And I'll just show you those right now. And then we would, and this is what I was not doing initially until around 2014, 15-ish. Then I would take off the sheet protector, and now we're taking it to higher order thinking. So what animal was in the circle? Well, it was a bear. And who was in the box? A snake. Under the X, a fish. In the triangle, a cat. Who has a line under him? An elephant, and a line above, a turtle. Okay, so we would do that. And then at the same time, I was having students do the number page. And on the number page that you all saw, we would go in, and this, I was inspired from what's called the symbol digit test. And they would give 9 numbers, and we do have a 9-page one with 9 different colors, but they would have people in psychological testing show them symbols that go with numbers, and then you go in and write those down. Well, what we do, we go in and we'll X the 2 and circle the 1, put a line above the 5, a line under the 4, circle the 1, and box the 3. Now, remember how the Stroop effect said having conflicting stimuli is important for developing the brain? Well, one thing you may or may not have noticed is that I did not follow the same order that I did on the animals. That's intentional. It causes conflicting stimuli. However, the symbols are the same. So you may notice the 2 is blue, the green, 1 is green, 5 is black, 4 is yellow, 1 is green, and 3 is red. So then I can ask a student, what number did I put an X on? And they would say 2. what color was the 2? And they would say blue. What animal did I put an X on? And they would say a fish. The number for the circle is 1. The color is green. The animal is a bear. Okay, so, and these correspond with those code cards in the game. The 1, the green, the bear, and the circle. Okay, you see that? And then here was our 2 and our B and our blue and our X. And so the same thing for the line above is going to be for the number 5, the color black, and our turtle. The line below is for our 4, our yellow, and our elephant. And the circle was for the 1, and the box was for the 3, and this and the snake and red. But then we could alternate. Remember when we were doing this and we were saying the number, we could say the number 1, the color orange, the animal camel. Well, now talk about higher order thinking. The number 2, the color green, the animal a turtle. The number would be 4, the color green, the animal a snake. And so that is part of this overlapping secret code in what's called the Brown and Back. And so everything builds on each other and all of our different games. And you will notice that in the handout that I gifted you on the page. And then when you're doing those colored arrows, that's where those also have meaning. And so here, yellow is 4. This is blue. Black is a turtle. The direction is down. And that's just showing you 4 things. And so taking numbers and colors and letters, and we can put the letters because the first letter of the alphabet is A, the second is B, the third is C, and even put the sounds in there as well. So by taking numbers and colors and letters and sounds and directionality, it's kind of like a meeting I had with a neuropsychiatrist. Okay. And I was showing him what I just showed you. And I showed it about that fast, right? Like you guys just got like a bucket of water poured over you. That may have just felt like that. And he looked at me and he said, Carol, no wonder what you're doing is changing the brain. And it's generalizing to academics because you are using all the regions of the brain simultaneously. You're letting, you're talking about numbers and colors and letters and directions and sounds, and you're letting students, use markers and put down cubes. And so they're using their hands, they're using their voice, they're using their eyes. And we have so many students, y'all, that we work with who are not vocal. And so they may be doing this and they are using a device, or they are pointing to it, or they are getting out some words, but they are doing it. And please always assume competency. Please do that for me. And know that there is hope and these areas can be developed. In July, at the end of July, July 25th and 26th, I have gone ahead and scheduled a 2-day workshop, okay, for how to implement Equipping Minds into your classroom, your learning center, whether you're private, public, homeschooler, educational therapist, wherever you are, even if you are working with senior adults or in a center for individuals with disabilities, it's really appropriate for anybody. There's just going to be more of an emphasis on how it looks in a school setting or one-on-one, small group and large group. So that went up yesterday. And actually the picture you're going to see for it is of a school in Africa that was trained. And we have a therapist in that country who did the training, who went through our training and then did their school training, because doing it online was not an option. So you'll see that picture. And they've been using it in their private school there this last year. So that's, yes,
Dr.
Dr.
Brown, would you be interested in, setting something up to actually train those who want to use Equipping Mind so that they can be a certified Equipping Mind therapist? So maybe we can talk about this and see how we can set it up.
Yes. Now we do have our, we just had our annual certification course,
Right.
and we do record that. So all of that is recorded. So if there's somebody who wants to do that, what we have allowed, for quite a while now, is you can go in and get that online course that was recorded, because we had people with us in person. We had satellite centers this year around the US. And then we had people in other countries, but we record that. So you can go in, watch it at your own pace, rewatch it. And then we set up a meeting, and you meet with me for about an hour and show me that you can do the program, and then you're certified in it. Okay. Now, let me just tell you this. You do not have to be certified to use it. Okay. A lot of professionals, though, absolutely. We love to be certified in things. That's important. So a lot of our educational therapists absolutely get certified because they want those credentials. At the same time, when I do a 2-day training, like I'm going to do in July, for schools, I am training them to go and use it. Okay. They get a professional development, that they're getting PD hours, that they've attended this. Some people get continuing education credits, but the key is you can still use it. Okay. So we want people using it. That's why all those free YouTube resources are out there. And I will also tell you this: if you look at the certification course and the cost is prohibited, you just email me. And
I would have to ask for discount.
And
In Nigeria.
yes, and that's where, because depending on different situations and parts in the world and what you're doing, we have always trained anyone who wanted trained. Okay. And so we have always been able to work with everybody on that. So absolutely. So this one coming up is a great one to do in July. I'm actually doing
Can you put it on the chat so that people will know where to go?
Yes, it's actually right there under the shop. So when you're at the shop, if you go to download those handouts, then look, specifically right now, it is the picture of the school in Africa that's being trained is in the picture, and it'll say implementing Equipping Minds in the Classroom workshop, July 25th and 26th. And then if people are in other countries, if we're not able to mail the workbooks, we send you the PDF so you can print that. Once again, the same thing with the cards. There's the different Facebook groups and the YouTube and so much. So, and
you should list us on your websites too. We use Equipping Minds.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I know the time is well spent and people have so many questions. So please, you have our email. let me also put it up again so that if you want to send us an email, and we can always, I think you should let us communicate with Dr. Brown, because, you know, we want to be able to arrange some kind of discount so
yeah.
that those in Nigeria, you know, we know how it is, especially right now, so that you can reach out to us and we'll be able to communicate with her for what your needs are and get them to you. And also at the foundation, we are certified, we are approved by
Mhm.
the International Board of Continuing Credentialing and Continuing Education Services to give CE units, CE credits to
Okay, great.
those who take some of our seminars or workshops. This is an hour. So you can easily get an hour's CE credit for this today with the permission of Dr. Brown, of course.
Absolutely.
Well, all right.
And for someone who got on late, okay, then remember, go to the Equipping Minds website, go to the shop, go under games to use with Equipping Minds, and that's where you're going to see all of those handouts. I didn't get to show you all the new ways we're using those Stroop Effect pages because we just didn't have time. But we will be doing that at the training in July. And but thank everybody for joining. We are, I'm always just humbled and amazed at who God brings. And now you have this hope and can help share with others. And I am so appreciative of Dr. Williams and your work and how you serve the world and your passion. And it's just been wonderful to partner with you on this and on this journey and to encourage each other and encourage all of you that are listening. Thank you so much.
And thank you for not saying no when I sent you an email to please do a presentation for us. You said, of course, and you even called me. So thank you so much for that. We appreciate it. Okay?
No, you're welcome.
So please, everybody, share your knowledge with the world. Please, let's help this special population, and we can only do it together. And before we go, I'd like to quickly mention Mr. Ben Ariko, who has a Dyslexia Foundation in Nigeria. He has a center in Abuja, in Lagos, and I believe he's about to set one up in Kano. It's one other person that we call on sometimes to be a resource. He is on here. I would like for us to also appreciate him for being a part of this. And, you know, we've called him to be an advisory board member to some regulating institutions, and he didn't say no. I want to appreciate him online, on record for that today. And hopefully he and I will, you know, discuss further and how we can collaborate with you more to impact more people in Africa. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Brown. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Don't forget, we have resources. Equipping Minds has a website. Go there to get information. Come check out our YouTube channel. We'll upload the video, and so will she, so that you can get to watch it and spread the word across everybody. Let's share our knowledge. It's not for our benefit, but for the benefits of the persons we serve. So thank you. Thank you for today. So I wish everybody a wonderful and pleasant rest of the day.
Okay,
Enjoy your weekend. Bye.
bye.